us do this. Let's say that a builder started working on September 10th. And let's say that they finished November 15th. So that's last day there. And they're not getting, they sent an invoice and they're not getting paid. So you just said from this day, they've got 180 days to do what?
120.
Well, he said 180.
It's 180 days to enforce it.
To file a lawsuit.
Furnished labor.
Yeah, from the last to file a lawsuit. There is 120 days. Who said that?
I did.
You did, Elizabeth. What's that for?
Now, I'm not sure about my notes. It says.
You're right. You're correct.
20 days after the last labor to furnish it.
To file the lien.
File the lien.
So to go file the lien, you've got 120 days from last day there to go file the lien, and you've got 180 days, they run concurrently, to seek a lawsuit. In other words, maybe you're still not getting paid. Well, then you can go seek a lawsuit within 180 days after the last day there. Now, didn't the reading say that mechanic liens enjoy priority?
That's in our section.
Oh, that's, no, it's mechanic lien.
We have a priority.
I know you do too, but I believe it talked about this in this unit too, didn't it? Let me help you out.
Yeah, say it again. I'm sorry.
Guys, North Carolina is a pure race state, and that might be in Elizabeth's section, but so I'm gonna let her talk about that. Here's the deal with this. Contractor starts work on September 10th, first day there, even if they just drop off materials, first day there. Last day, they're not getting paid, they've sent invoices and they don't receive payment. They've got 120 days to go seek in court a lien, a money claim, pay us for what we did. They've got 180 days to seek a lawsuit if it looks like that lien's not going to be paid. If they get a lien, if it does work out that they get the lien, it goes on record the first day they were there. So it enjoys a little priority over other liens that may have been filed in here. What if this property, what if it was just a regular property that maybe a builder's adding on a room or something? You know, they can still seek a lien for work being done and not paid. What if that owner went October 12th and borrowed some money against the house? We call that a home equity loan or line of credit. What if they went and borrowed money against the house and it went on record October 12th? This work that didn't get paid, that mechanic lien can get priority over this lien that was recorded after the first day there. So mechanic liens have priority. Now they're not going to get to January 1 unless they started work January 1. It goes to when they were first day there. So they're not going to ever be in front of real estate property tax. Nothing to get in front of real estate property tax because it's priority number 1, right? Unless you had an unpaid income tax bill from the year before. But that's what it means by priority. Does that make sense?
And can you go back over the 15 days again?
What 15 days?
When we talked earlier about that rate.
Oh, if this is if this is construction, see, adding a room onto your house as a homeowner, that lien agent section isn't going to apply. This is if builders are building like a development or something like that. Subcontractors want to be paid, don't they? So within 15 days from beginning the work, they need to register or contact a lien agent. So it's just a company or a person that really would represent them in case they do need to go seek a lien.
So it's preventive action.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It's preventive because now you've got it on record, so to speak, and then if you have to go seek the lien, you kind of already got it started.
But if you don't go, you can't. Really not.
That's right. If the property applies to that lien agent, not all properties do. Okay? Go back with me to real property taxes. I didn't hear anything about special assessments.
You got that add a balloon or whatever, and then your property tax is based on the value of or the lien is based on the value of the property, right?
Okay, say that again, I beg your pardon.
Now, add a balloon, or add a, however you say that word.
Oh,
Add more.
Lord, I thought you, I'm gonna make you laugh, because here's what I thought I heard, and it's probably my hearing. I thought you said, if you add a balloon,
Oh, could have been,
could have
the
been.
day I've had.
So you're talking about the real property tax.
Yes.
It's called ad valorem, according to value.
Yes.
You were close. Ad valorem is the real property taxes, but a special assessment is a different tax. What's that?
It's like when they make an improvement like on your land, or not on your land, but like on the street or something like that.
So a special assessment, everybody, what I would write down about that is, it's a one-time tax. A special assessment is a one-time tax. It's called an improvement tax. Like Demaria said, what if the city is bringing in city water and sewer to you? You're in the county and they're bringing in city water and sewer. The property that benefits from that's going to pay for it. If they're paving a road, if they're bringing in lighting or sidewalks, the property that benefits from that's going to pay for that. And it would be called a special assessment, which is a property tax. Now, special assessments enjoy priority too, but they'll never get in front of the real property ad valorem tax. What does ad valorem mean?
Add value.
Add value or according to value. The government has a right, everybody, to establish taxation, and all of our property is not worth the same thing. So we're going to pay tax according to the value of our property. And the value that we'll be speaking about is tax value. Okay? All righty.
I got a question.
Uh-huh.
So at my store that I work at, I got a letter from the city here as well. Pretty much they're doing some changes in front of the street. Like adding a sidewalk, a median in the road, like some right of way, something, and they're actually writing us a check. Would that fall under special assessment, or is that something else, right?
I wouldn't call that a special assessment because the property owner would be assessed or taxed. They're using some of your land, I guess. You know, like taking some for the right of way, and so they're paying you for that. It's kind of like a taking, it's not quite eminent domain, maybe.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me. It's kind of like when utility companies first come into areas, they're going to pay the homeowner something at the beginning. It's an amicable type of an arrangement. I've had students take my course who work for Piedmont Gas, and they do that job. If Piedmont Gas is going to be brought into a certain community, they go meet the neighbors and make it more friendly instead of we're just coming in taking the land. And they do come up with some kind of compensation at the beginning there because you're using someone else's land and we don't have to give permission because they'll have a right.
They can do, right? They can come in, just like you said, and do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. And so it only seems fair they pay something at the beginning. It's called just compensation. So just means fair, fair compensation. It might not feel fair to you and me, but they do try to do a market value payment. That's what it sounds like.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay then, what did you tell me about that commercial lien? Commercial broker lien.
The one about the law back in 2011.
Yeah.
It allows, well, just like it says, it allows the real estate broker with a written agency agreement to represent the property owner for commercial transactions.
Okay, so why do you think that is? Why did that law come about, do you think?
Because.
Protect the broker.
Yeah, because-
Well, residential brokers don't have that right.
No, it's-
The commercial
Mm-hmm.
broker's commission.
But it's,
Protects for your commission.
yeah, but it's before they close, so that's why it comes into a thing before a commercial deal is done, usually has more money involved, so to protect the broker, they have 90 days to file a lien after the tenant takes possession, so I guess.
If it's a leasing.
So it's either, I guess, when they go, well, not under contract, but when they sign, I guess they do sign contract.
Mm-hmm.
They have 90 days after that to file a lien, and the lien must be satisfied within 18 months, or it's pretty much like the rest of the liens, where they have like 10 years for it to be enforced, and then it's just kind of. redone.
Yeah, the, commercial brokers, I've had students say to me, they just have better lobbyists than residential brokers. But guys, commercial brokerage is high stakes. I mean, people spend, I could even say years working on transactions, and they do want to make sure they're going to be paid if they had an agreement to do the work. Kind of like a listing agreement, kind of like a buyer agreement. When we get hired to do a job, we want to be paid, don't we? And so the work would have had to have been done. You know, like maybe you listed a commercial property, a commercial building, and you've gotten it under contract with the buyer, so you've secured the buyer, so you've sort of you've done your work, you've earned your commission. This is a lien that will protect if this person gets a feeling, or they're just, you can probably tell, or you might even get vibes or hear about it, where the owner says, I'm not gonna pay you. And so they'll have a right to seek this lien for payment, and it really does remind me a little bit of a worker's lien, you know, like a contractor's lien in a way. Not the same, but it reminds me of that. What do you think residential agents do? I mean, I have in my career, I've had people who said, I'm not gonna pay you, even after I did the work, even after having a listing agreement. And so when you hear something like that, the first person you call is your broker in charge. And the broker in charge will talk to the person on behalf of the company, because the company is the one that represents them technically. Residential brokers don't have this right. The only way, if you want to seek your commission, if the owner says, I'm not paying you, you would have to go to small claims court, you know, to pursue it. We can't file a lien. How many real estate brokers do you think pursue that in small claims court? I don't think a lot. I don't think so. But why, Kim? But why do you think? Now, you wouldn't be allowed to do it yourself. It'd have to be your company doing it. And so, Elizabeth, why do you think companies don't pursue it?
For marketing, I mean, it's a bad image.
It's marketing. It's PR. It's goodwill. Because in the real estate industry, now you might not feel this way, but it's kind of got a glamorous kind of you make a lot of money kind of business image. And so when we do our work, yes, we expect to be paid, but most of us probably don't want to go sue people to pay us. Now, you earned it, you would have a right to go seek it, but a lot of people, I've never gone after a commission that way. And I don't know that my company that I work for ever did either. In fact, this person who didn't want to pay the commission, my broker in charge spoke to this person, and the company agreed to take less money, which I don't think is right, but something's better than nothing, right? And so they kind of worked it out and compromised. What did you want to say?
Reason I'm saying, it was 2 cases, my husband and I had to take someone to court.
Oh.
So, it was 2 cases. What happened in both of the cases, day before, they happened the day before their listing agreement expired, they went and selected another real estate company.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, by selecting them, the first one, they were owed the commission. But the ladies, both ladies said no, they didn't want to pay him because the real estate agent was lazy. They was trying to trash her.
Trying to get out of it.
Yes. So the judge ended up awarding the first ones their money. So that's why I said, just hearing those cases, they both were awarded their money because they still was in a contract with these individuals, but they beautiful homes and everything, but they felt that the one that really the home belonged to, say for instance, the company that did list the home, they went to them and said, hey, we like how you gave us all these different answers, so they went along with the company who first listed it, but not the one that actually showed them the property.
Oh, I see.
So they got their money.
Yeah. I don't hear of it. I don't think you hear. Now, maybe we don't hear of it. Maybe it's happening, but I just don't think we want that image, even though we earn it and you work so hard. Guys, don't you think the overall public thinks that you make a lot of money as a real estate agent? I think the image is, if you're charging 5 or 6%, the overall public thinks that you get all of that. And I don't know that we've done ourselves any favors over the years. When I was in real estate, the motto was dress for success. Drive a nice car, dress really well. Well, so that image, you know, that successful image also gives the impression you're making a lot of money, right? And so I think that overall, I think that's kind of the thinking that most people think, that we make so much money because if we charge 6% for a listing, you know, the idea is, yeah, that's a lot of money out of an owner's pocket. But guys, it's broken down at least 4 splits, at least 4. But you're right. If you earned it, you do have a right for it. That's for sure. Okay, good job. Next section. Who had the general lien section?
We did.
Yay!
Yay.
Team. Go team.
Alrighty.
Let's see how good your team
I
is.
don't know. So general liens are both for real property and personal property, right? They're not tied to a specific parcel of land. So that was the first thing that we talked about. A judgment is issued by a court. It then becomes an involuntary lien, and they're registered in the book of judgment, and they are good for 10 years from the date of judgment. I'm missing anything else on that?
Okay, I have a question, and it's not in this book. I would love for you all to tell me what you think. So if a judgment is issued and it's good for 10 years, does it just go away after 10 years? What do you think happens?
Yeah, it stays inactive and goes back to either be resubmitted, reissued, but that case is not enforceable at that time.
Because it's gone, you would have to reissue, refile. Because I was thinking about it today, golly, what if you had a judgment on maybe a renter, they left and didn't pay you the rent, and you went to court and said, I want a judgment, which is a money claim, for my money. I mean, somebody could say, all we have to do is wait around for 10 years and it's going to go away. Well, I don't. That one might expire, maybe that's a good word, but you can go to court and
Get a new one.
get a new one, I would think. One of my students today Googled this for me, and she said that it could be refiled, and then it said something else, which I think is interesting. It may stay on your credit even after it expires. And what we read was it could stay on your credit a couple of years even after the judgment is gone. So interesting about that. Alrighty, so what else you want to tell us?
Well, we all did learn that you really need to pay your taxes and everything. That's all good things. And you don't want to buy anything from anyone who hasn't done that either. Personal property tax lien for unpaid taxes. For personal property like a yacht, you know, RV, 4-wheeler, whatever. Kind of
A yacht?
Sure, a yacht.
That's up our alley.
State tax lien for unpaid inheritance or state income. It is also involuntary, also for 10 years. Federal lien is for IRS, not paying them or not paying your withholdings. This one said something about the priority is based on the date of the filing of the recording, and it doesn't supersede any previously recorded liens.
Correct.
What does that mean?
It means the next page at the top of 54.
Okay, yeah, our priorities.
North Carolina is a pure race state. What that means is if somebody gets, let's say someone gets awarded that judgment or a lien, a money claim like that, or personal property tax lien, it would be very hugely beneficial to record it. Once it goes on record, that sets the priority. It's kind of like first come, first serve. So think about this, when you go buy a house if you borrow money and you get a loan from a lender, after you sign your paperwork, they want the attorney to get that on record because they've got a money claim. And so the date that it's recorded is the lien order that they're in. So we said that real property tax always gets priority, so nothing will get in front of January 1. So that would be your ad valorem tax. If you haven't paid it, January 1 is a lien. That's the priority. A mechanic lien, you know, even though they went after it after November, it gets a little bit of a break because it gets to get in front of other people, but it only goes back to the first day there. So income tax liens don't get priority. So in other words, if you owe income tax and you find out in, let's say you find out in April, April something, let's just say 10th, that's the date that it would go on priority when they file it. So we're a recordation state and race to the courthouse to get your claim on record is what it means. Some have priority, special assessments and real property tax, and even personal property tax will enjoy some priority. And usually they're all kind of huddled up in here. So your ad valorem tax, special assessment tax, and then personal property tax would all be kind of in order like that. Real property tax first, special assessments next, and then personal property tax if it hasn't been paid. And then everything else will be in the order of the recordation.
Right.
Okay? That's important for if someone goes into foreclosure, things will be paid out of proceeds according to what order they're in. And so if you're way in the back of the line, you might not get paid anything. Okay, good.
All right, so that pretty much takes care of the priority liens.
Okay.
Then we went to effects. So if there's a lien is not cleared and you buy the land, then guess what? You get the lien too.
So how would you prevent that? How would, she said if you buy property and there's a specific lien on it, which means it's tied to that parcel that you just bought, how would you as a buyer protect yourself from that? Title search. In other words, if you're going to borrow money from a bank, we call it a mortgage, they're going to require a title examination. And so that lawyer who does the title search should find everything that's been on record anyway, and they're going to look a lot of different places, but they would check and make sure there are not any unpaid liens. And generally speaking, most of us have a mortgage or a second mortgage or something like that, and that's going to be paid at closing out of our proceeds. So it all gets settled up at the real estate closing. You're not going to sell your property and still have an outstanding lien, a specific lien on it. It needs to be all cleared up. That's why this is a little bit important to real estate agents. When you go out to meet a seller to talk to them about putting their house on the market, you're going to ask them what all they owe, because we need to know that. We need to know for a lot of reasons, but here's a good reason. So you're telling me you owe $100,000 on your loan. You're telling me you got a home equity loan of $25,000. So the total debt so far is $125,000. We check the neighborhood. Your property's not worth that much. So that could be a problem, couldn't it? Because you definitely want to make sure that the property owner can pay all that off that they owe, so the new buyer doesn't buy it and have something sneak up on them, like a lien, a specific lien.
So there's no recourse as a buyer at all? I mean, this happened to me when I bought a home a few years ago, about 3 months after ownership. Water and sewer comes, they're gonna disconnect it. There was the previous owner paid like on a quarterly basis, and it was not in the closing documents. The lawyer failed to find that.
Wow.
So I was stuck with a bill to.
Feels to me, I'm not a lawyer, feels to me you would have recourse against that lawyer. Because if they missed it.
It was not on my closing document anywhere.
Water bills used to be liens around this area on the property. I don't think that it's a lien anymore, but it used to be, And the closings, when we would go to closings, the lawyer would, first of all, we would ask the owner, have you paid your water bill? Or when's the last one you paid, and give us an invoice? And the lawyer would search and see if something is not paid. It would be the lawyer's responsibility, I would think, and the seller. So as far as recourse, you could sue one of those people or both. But if it's tied to the property, you gotta pay it to get rid of it. And then go after them for the compensation of it. And whether you win that or not, but that would be the recourse. Yeah, it used to be we asked about water bills. I don't believe there are liens around here anymore anyway. Guys, tell me something, before we go too much further, I want to go back to this mechanic lien. Just one more second here. Why, have you heard about going to a closing, or have you been to a closing where the owner of the property, the seller, the lawyer's going to have every seller sign off on what we call a lien affidavit or a mechanic lien waiver? In other words, every seller, the closing lawyer is going to ask, have you had any work done on your property in the most recent 120 days that you have not paid for yet? Every seller, every closing, the lawyer is going to ask that. And so what if you've had work done? They want to make sure that the contractor's been paid and the subcontractors. What if you contract out with a contractor and then they contract out with other contractors, don't they? And we call them subcontractors to us. Guys, if the contractor doesn't pay them, the subcontractor can come back to you and say, we need payment. So it seems to me, if I were paying a contractor, I would want to see proof that they paid the subs. Or let me pay everybody that way, because the subcontractors can seek a mechanic lien too. All righty, go ahead.
Deed restrictions?
Uh-huh.
That's like a private agreement, subdivisions or developers to maintain a specific standard for the lots or subcontractors.
What kind of standards, what can you think of?
Seems like almost like an HOA type of thing. There's a covenant or something that you have to abide by.
It probably comes with bylaws or covenants, deed restrictions.
Could be no modular homes.
Could be no modular homes in the community. Could be, if you're buying a lot in here, we want you to build an X amount of square footage at least. Because the idea is to maintain the value of the neighborhood. And if you've got people building 3,000 square foot homes, and then you got somebody building a 1,000 square foot home, what do you think is going to happen to the value of the 3,000 square foot home? Probably going to come down. Everybody good on that? So having some restrictions, it really is to establish standards of a neighborhood and what's expected. It's supposed to be a good thing, even though we're calling it an encumbrance. If it's in your deeds, you have to adhere to it like a rule, so that is a little bit encumbering, isn't it? Okay?
Then we went to Liens, which is litigation pending. So buyer beware, buy at own risk, basically. Then the writ of attachment.
Okay, let's stop right there a minute. What do you mean?
So,
Buyer beware.
well, if there's litigation pending, right, you can still sell the property. So obviously someone could buy that property, but if the litigation then becomes out that they have the right to the property or whatnot, and
If it comes
it's yours.
against you, yeah.
The buyer who bought it could lose the property.
Yes, lose property.
So again, title search would be important, wouldn't it? So pending litigation, kind of like if the property owner is under foreclosure, the bank will file a notice. We're suing, there's a lawsuit pending. And so it should show up in a title search so that the new buyer will be protected at least. Don't buy that if they've got this lawsuit pending, because it could affect you and the property that you want to buy. Okay then, go ahead.
Writ of execution, or writ attachment, sorry. It's a lien that is basically if you have unsecured debt, they could then file a lien against the property and get their money that way.
Against the unsecured property, the personal property, right? I mean, not the real estate, it's not to the property, it's for the, isn't it for the unsecured?
It's, if you haven't paid your unsecured debt,
Mhm.
but we thought that it would go against the property.
Unsecured property. So what if you finance something, what if you finance something and you didn't pay for it? Like, what if you bought,
Furniture.
yeah, furniture, and you financed it? That's unsecured, it's not secured to the property. And so that furniture company could seek this writ of attachment. We want our money, so the courts could say sell the furniture to pay them,
Okay.
okay? And who's going out there? Hunter's gonna go.
It's okay, I'm okay.
Hunter's gonna go, the sheriff will go out there to serve the notice, right?
We'll serve the notice, and if they're not there, we'll make 3 attempts before sending it back, and it'll be reissued, so either we'll get it to you, or they'll hire out to come give it to you, so they'll serve the notice.
3 attempts.
You have 3 attempts to serve it, so you do like a morning attempt, an afternoon attempt, or a night attempt. You can go to people's jobs, you can go wherever,
Wow.
and you get it, and it's kind of, people feel kind of embarrassed. You know, like, why is the sheriff showing up at my work serving me divorce papers, civil summons, or
Mhm.
stuff like that, but, I mean, it's just serving papers. It's not like we're there to criminally charge anyone,
Yeah, you're just the messenger, so to speak, serving it.
because the county wants its money, trust me.
That's right.
Right, and so the writ of execution is when the county sells the property.
When they send the sheriff out to serve the notice, right? And you're right, the property is being sold to satisfy the judgment, the money claim.
The money claim.
Okay, good. Very excellent. All right, who had the easement section? We did, okay, Kim. And whoever else was on your team?
We did the definition of easement is a non-possessory right to use the land of another for a particular purpose. There are 4 different types of easement. Easement appurtenant, easement engross, creating an easement, and terminating an easement.
Okay. So tell me about the easement appurtenant. Guys, think about this for a moment. We already learned what the word appurtenant means. What does that word appurtenant mean? It's a right or a privilege that goes with the property. So an easement appurtenant would mean
It runs with the land.
runs with the land.
Alrighty, and the easement engross, we use the example, it's a personal interest or right to use the land of another. And what we use as an example is like the train tracks, billboards, or utilities.
So they've got a personal right to use the land of another. Okay.
Creating an easement.
Okay, let's stop and talk about this a little bit more though. Go back to page 55, easement appurtenant. There's some terms in there that we need to make sure we know. One's called servient, one's called dominant. Did you guys talk about what those terms mean? Because you'll probably see that on a test question.
One is a state, and
What is what?
well, the servant tenement is another term for a state.
It's the land the easement's on, right? This, okay.
And it's
The
the track.
servant gives up their, however, whatever the easement is, but they're the ones that gives up their part of land for use of another person.
Yeah, so
It has to be still.
the servient is the land that is being used by somebody else. They call it the servient. Think about if you had, look at this illustration on 55. Lot owner A is the servient. Think about it this way. They're being of service in sort of a way to the B property who wants to use their land. The user of the property, the user of the easement, is called the dominant. because that property benefits by the easement over the lot owner A. So how is lot B benefiting by using lot A?
Cut down any of the trees.
They don't have to cut down any of their trees. So they're crossing over lot owner A because they don't want to cut down their trees. Now, she mentioned the easement by necessity, I believe she did. Is that an easement by necessity?
They might not be able to take the trees out.
Why not?
It might be like a ravine or like a grading on the elevation.
Well, but just looking at that illustration, does it look like an easement by necessity? Doesn't look like an easement by necessity. And I don't even know if that would be. An easement by necessity is when you're completely landlocked, where you've got other people's property and you can't get out, so to speak, to get to a public, you need ingress and egress. So if he had to bring in field dirt or something like that, that's his problem. It's not an easement by necessity because he's not landlocked, because the public road's right there. And he could go around his trees or go another way or cut down trees, but that's not a law, that's not an easement by necessity, which is by law. Well, so, Kevin, you mentioned that the servient is giving up, they're letting somebody use their property. You said something about giving up the use of the land. What do you mean?
They're the one giving up their part of the land for use of someone else.
Okay, so what does that mean?
If they're
Can
going-
A use that land?
Yeah.
A still can
It's
use
their
it,
right,
can't they?
But they're giving up a piece of their property, they're giving up a amount of square footage or a mile's length, whatever the size or whatever the easement is actually for.
They're letting somebody use that, but A can still use it.
Right.
Because B didn't buy that land, they're just using it to cross over. So A still has the right to use it. Is everybody good on that?
Still belongs to A.
It's still, thank you. A owns the land, don't they? A owns that land, so just because B's using it doesn't mean A can't use it. They're still the owner of the property. Does that make sense? It's a little bit different when you talk about that easement and gross. Tell me about that. You mentioned the railroad, so expand on that a little bit.
The railroad tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Getting from the tracks to the land.
Mm-hmm.
So you would need to, because the way it runs with the property,
Mm-hmm.
so you would try to.
All right, look at this illustration. Let's help Ms. Kim out. Look at this illustration. It's telephone poles, isn't it? And that could be a railroad track too, because that's what she was using. Tell me about A in regard to those telephone lines. They're running on lot owner A, and so we know that A still owns that land. But tell me about those telephone lines.
They belong to a third party.
They belong to a third party. That's important. An easement in gross is a third party. All right, I need to ask you some more questions here. Can lot owner A fence in her property so the telephone company can't get in there? No. So when someone has a right to use your property, you cannot do anything that would harm that right. Yes, lot owner A is going to mow that land. That's still their land. But if the telephone company wants to come in because they need to make repairs, lot owner A needs to make sure it's available because the telephone company has the right to use it. Right? So in other words, if they had think about this is real life. Don't we have easements on our property? You live in a neighborhood, you're bound to have a Spectrum easement or Piedmont Gas or Duke Power. What if you've got a fenced-in backyard and you lock your gate because you have a pet back there and you don't want somebody just coming and opening the gate and leaving the gate open? What if Duke Power needs to come into your backyard and you've got a locked gate? What can they do?
They got the law.
They can tear down the fence. They have a right to use that land. Now, that's not what they like to do because of PR and goodwill, but you're obstructing their right to use it. they've got a right to get access to that place where they've got an easement. And Terrell said, easement and gross is a third party coming in. So this is something important you need to make sure you understand. If it's a third party coming in, it's not A and B. It's somebody else coming in using the land of another, or probably others. There's not a dominant property. There's not a property that benefits from that. You said a minute ago, Kim, it's a personal benefit. The telephone company or the railroad would benefit. The property does not benefit. Does that make sense? I would write it down. Think about it though. There's no dominant. There's no parcel that benefits. It's the company coming in using the land of others that benefits, not the land. A and B, if we have them side by side, which is called an easement appurtenant, B, that lot benefits because they're able to cross over another lot. So there is a benefit on an appurtenant easement. But when it's a third party coming in, there's not a benefit to the land, so there's no dominant. Everybody in that illustration, it looks like that's crossing over A and B. Both of those are servient, but there's no dominant property. Does that make sense? There's no property that benefits from that. The utility company is benefiting from that. I want you to go back to one more thing on page 55. If you'll take a minute and read your second to last paragraph on page 55. Second to last paragraph. So let me remind you, when you take your exam in here, and when you take your exam after you finish here, you've got a national park questions, and you've got state-specific questions. North Carolina says if that easement isn't recorded, if A sells the property, the new buyer coming in for that lot does not have to honor that easement. Is that how you read it? What's wrong?
Say it again.
Okay, A and B are, this is appurtenant because they're two side-by-side properties. A allows B to cross over. If that easement did not get recorded, if they didn't have agreement in writing and get it recorded, if A sells their property to C, C does not have to honor that easement. That would be a bummer, wouldn't it? That would be a big bummer. Because what if you're out there showing that property, and what if you're showing it to, well, what if you're showing B's property, and B says, the next door neighbor lets me cross over to get to the road, so we don't want to cut down our apple trees or whatever, and then this person buys it. And then what if lot owner A decides to sell, and that easement was not in writing or on record? B's going to be harmed because that easement wasn't recorded. So as an agent, you would probably say, if B says, we have this right to use, I'm probably going to cross my fingers and say, do you have it in writing, and did you get it recorded? Because that is what protects people. In writing is big, and getting that recorded, because North Carolina says to make it legally enforceable, it needs to be recorded. So you can see that to be a mess. So if you see, you might not know that there's an easement, but you're going to ask the owner of the property. You know, if you see, I mean, you would probably you could probably see if somebody's crossing over, you might have an idea, but you would ask the owner of the property, has anybody got a right to use your land? And if they do you have it in writing? And if you have it in writing, did you get it recorded? Because we need to get all the information we can about this property that we want to put on the market.
It says the easement runs with the land, but the key is if A sells land and B does not record it, B's out of luck.
Could be, if C comes in and says, oh, I don't care, you can keep using it, but C could come in and say, I don't like that one bit. then B's out of luck. Yeah, the easement appurtenant, the word appurtenant says it runs with the land. But in North Carolina takes it one step further. You need to have it on record if, to be enforceable against the new buyer of that servient. That make sense? So B could lose the right. Mm-hmm.
So I may be getting a little ahead, but the easement by prescription, does that have to be recorded too? Like if it's over 20 years?
I would probably think that you would want to protect yourself. The question Demarius is asking about is that easement by prescription. Easement by prescription, let's just look at this illustration and pretend. Let's pretend that lot owner B has been crossing over lot owner A without permission. He's just driving across it. A didn't give him permission, but A did not say you don't have my permission. So B's just been crossing over it continually, openly, without permission, means adverse, notorious, and after the prescribed period of 20 years, B could go to court to seek the legitimate easement, and it doesn't say it has to be on record, but he would be smart to put it on record.
So if it's not on record and then somebody sells, is that prescription still run with it, or?
That's a good question, isn't it? That's a very good question. Yeah, under your easement by prescription, the claimant's use, let's see, when a claimant's made use of another land for a certain amount of time, and this is a law, the prescribed period is 20 years, the use must be continual, etc. Open, the owner could have learned about it. A property owner can prevent an easement. It doesn't say much, does it? All right, here's the way it sounds to me. The law says if you've been using it for 20 years, you have an easement. So I don't know that it would need to be recorded because the law's going to take the precedent. The law says you've been using it for 20 years uninterrupted. Now, I think the person using it seems like I would go make sure I've got it. I would go see a lawyer and say I want this on record because it could be disputed, I guess. But it doesn't say that though, does it? What do y'all think about that? The morning class said, I don't like that. That doesn't seem right. If it's your property, how can somebody say they got an easement on it? How can somebody come and say they got a right to use it? Well, North Carolina says when you own property in North Carolina, you need to oversee it. You need to make sure that people are not using your land. Because if they are and you don't want them to, all you have to do is say no. I'm telling you no. Put it in writing, and you've defeated this claim that they think they have. Or you can say, I'm giving you permission. I see you, it's helpful for you. I'm giving you permission, and that's going to defeat their claim. I think there's probably more to that, though. I think you would have to go to court to prove it, and it seems like there'd be more to it to me. Instead of just saying, well, I've been using it 20 years, I got it. It just seems like it would need to be finalized. Or, something like that.
In most cases, it's typically, was there any agreement in writing, or is it posted no trespassing past this point?
That probably won't do it. Hunter said, what if you put no trespassing? I don't know that that's enough. It probably takes a little more action on on the person who owns the land.
So you'd say maybe like a surveyor to draw some distinctive lines?
Maybe even more than that. Maybe saying, don't use my property and putting it in writing. Because think about it. Think about people who own lots of land, lots of acres. I've heard about this happening up in the mountains where somebody owns a lot of land and they just don't go check it out regularly. And then when they do, they find out that somebody's been using their property without permission, but they just didn't check out their property. And North Carolina says you need to check your property out. Because if you don't, somebody else could start using it, or they could try to claim the title to it. That comes up in your discussion tomorrow night. It's called adverse possession. It's in your Unit 5. And adverse possession is almost like squatters' rights. Although in North Carolina we don't have squatters' rights. We have adverse possession. And that means almost like an easement by prescription. Somebody is using your land as if they own the land. Maybe they cut down trees on your property and they put a storage building back there, and they're acting as if they own it. If they act as if they own it for a prescribed amount of time, they could go to court and claim title to that property. And in North Carolina says, well, owner, why didn't you tell them to stop? Because you're supposed to oversee your property. And having a no trespass sign might not be enough. Even having it, now putting a fence up sounds like it would be, but just having your lot line staked out with an iron pipe or something, I don't know that that would do it either.
Yeah, because it goes in between, if you cross a fence, it's first degree, because it's with degree contained within. If you just cross a line where it says no trespass, it's second degree, misdegree. They're different, the severity decreases. But I'm trying to figure out what you're saying is like, if squatters are sitting on this land and they've done damage to personal property and real property.
Well, why are you saying damage?
Well, like if they're squatting your land, like they're using the land as if their home, like say, like you just said, they just tore down these trees to
Cut down
put a shed.
Okay.
You want, those trees have value to you and your property.
But you're supposed to oversee it and not let that happen.
So, but I'm trying to understand what you're saying, like, because I have the cop brain and then I'm trying to
Yeah,
do real estate.
yeah,
brain.
we're not talking about the cop stuff. I mean, we're not talking about the police work and the misdemeanors and all that. I'm sure that could happen or would happen. We're just talking about how people can get access to your property. And if you don't stop them, if you don't go to the police or you don't go to the sheriff, you might not be able to do anything. You might lose your rights. If it goes on, golly, 20 years is a long time, that they would have to be using it continually, uninterrupted.
So they would kind of see it as like abandonment, pretty much.
Good. I think that's a good way to look
You
at
can
it.
also take someone to court for that too.
Huh?
You can also take someone to court for that.
Sure.
As long as you can prove, other than meets and bounds, that that part of your property is yours,
Mm-hmm.
you can sue for, like, some of the timber. My dad has 1,400 acres of land outside of Denton on High Rock Lake,
Mhm.
and that same thing happened to him. The person that owned about the same amount of land, they cut all their timber off as a cutover and cut about 300 yards into my dad's land. My
Wow.
dad sued him for about 70 grand.
But that didn't go on for 20 years.
No.
Okay, so he stopped it.
Right.
If it went on for 20 years, I think the state law says, I think what you said is a good way to say it. Well, you must not care about your property, you're not overseeing it, and the law's gonna say somebody else can come in and take it.
Well, with both pieces of the property, like my dad's property, I mean, it's 1,400 acres.
Mhm.
And the guy that was cutting his timber was probably twice the amount. So literally those parts of the property probably haven't been walked on in 20 years yet.
Mhm.
You need a lot of people to cover that type of area.
I know. I'm sure there's way more to this, so we're just learning the tip of it. But basically, somebody using for 20 years continually and nobody said don't, you know, it does make you wonder why you didn't say stop, right? Or something like that. All right, let's see if you want to finish your section up. Who else is helping Miss Kim? Did she get appointed as the speaker?
No.
Are you the speaker, appointed speaker, Kim? Who else is gonna help?
Create
Well-
an easement.
No, we didn't talk about creating an easement, did we? We didn't talk about terminating an easement. I mean, we did a little tiny bit, but there's more to it.
Create an easement.
Mhm.
There are 3 ways to create an easement. Express grant,
Mhm.
spoken or written words.
Okay, stop there for 1 minute. Everybody, when we get into Unit 9, we're going to be talking about contract law. We'll see these words again. Expressed contracts. Because if you grant somebody an easement, it's like a contract, isn't it? Express means words. You either say the words or you put them in writing. That would be called express. Anything that has to do with real estate would be really better to put it in writing, wouldn't it? So you don't have any misunderstanding. So that's what express means. It's a contract term, a legal term like that. Okay, go ahead.
By implication, intended by parties.
implied, like that necessity.
Operation of the law, and that's by prescription.
Mhm.
And then, necessity, or easement by necessity, that's implication of law.
Mhm.
And the prescription, the easement, and we went over that 20 years.
Good.
And then terminating the easement, the easement can be terminated by the purpose when the easement no longer exists.
Mhm.
If the easement holder becomes the owner of the land,
Okay, so what does that mean? They call that merger.
If lot A buys lot B.
If lot A buys lot B, or if B buys A, there's no other property owner that the easement would be crossing over, right? Called merger, okay?
the release of the right of an easement to the owner, abandonment of the easement,
Mhm.
and non-use of the prescriptive easement.
Guys, you can have test questions in this regard, so let me give you an idea. What if you had a question and it said, lot owner B has been crossing over lot owner A for 19 years continually. Lot owner A never said anything about it. Lot owner B just kept using it. Then lot owner B went to Europe for a year. And so they were gone for a year, and then they came back and started using it again. Is that an easement by prescription? Answer's no. Has to be 20 years uninterrupted. Right? And that seems like a long stretch. It seems like that would be, I don't know how often these things happen, but that's a long time. And uninterrupted and continual use.
Well, it's there, you know it's happening for.
Yeah, well, true. We wouldn't be talking about it. That's true. Okay, good. Let's finish this section up. Tell us about a license and an encroachment.
A license is a personal, non-transfer privilege to enter the land of another for a specific purpose.
Okay, like what, for example?
Majority agricultural use,
Like
farming, and crops,
Or-
corn.
Hunting license.
hunting license, deer, fishing license, something like that. You have a right to come on
Timber rights.
timber, maybe something like that. That's good. Those are good, good examples. And is a license an encumbrance?
Yeah.
I don't think it is,
You
is
can
it?
take it away.
Yeah, it's just a personal, I don't think it is. That writ of attachment is an encumbrance, but a license isn't. You're just telling somebody they can come fish or hunt on your property. All righty, and what about an encroachment?
Where someone comes onto your property with a building, fence, all
Mhm.
something like
You know
that. Has to
what?
be more than a foot. That is an
You know what
encroachment.
What now?
In order for it to be considered encroachment, it has to be more than a foot.
Oh, really?
What the book says.
It does say that? Where does it say that?
First
Show me where-
paragraph, in the first paragraph.
I've never read that. It hadn't stood out to me.
It was an example, I think. The garage of one landowner actually extends 1 foot onto the neighbor's property.
Yeah.
This is an encroachment.
Yeah, that's an example. But you know what? How would you know there's an encroachment on your property?
Land survey.
Land survey, they call it a location survey, it's like a pictorial. You know, they'll show your lot and they'll show how the structures are situated on your lot.
I'd say it costs too much.
Surveys cost too
I
much.
want to build a fence, and I don't want to get a survey. So
So what are you gonna do?
just build a fence, see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Somebody else's.
But you may be losing out on part of your property
That's
if
true.
you do.
That's true.
That's a good point. You might not be utilizing it, it could go a positive way instead of a negative way.
And it's like fairly cheap versus legal ramifications. You pay $350, $375 for a property survey versus court costs, lawyer fee, time on your days, you gotta check off work to go to court. That's true.
I feel what he's saying though.
I'm hooking you up, man.
That $300 or $400,
Yeah.
that could be, it can be, we've got a rent house, and it has a fence on it. And my son's getting ready, he wants to move in there, so we're fixing it up a little bit. We need to tear that fence down and build another one, but fences cost a lot. And I'm thinking we need a survey, because I don't know if that fence is,
Legal.
yeah, I don't know
If that's the line.
if that's the line, because it looks like it's right on the line in the back. And I'm thinking, well, before we go spend $5,000 on a fence, we probably need to spend $300 or $400 to get a survey to show us exactly where our lot lines are.
If it's some
You
sort
not
of-
have any established corners?
Well, I'd have to go out there hunting, looking for the stakes.
That's what I do first.
Well, you know what, because there should be,
$400.
that would be an idea, because there should be the iron pins in the ground. That's a smart idea. Go out there and look. Well, the other thing about a survey would be, though, making sure that you're not building that fence on a utility easement. Aren't there companies that go around and, I've seen those commercials where they'll come,
811, you call them and they'll come on the mark, your power, water.
Call before you dig.
call before you dig. Let's do this. Thank you very much. Let's take our next break, everybody. Thank you for that. I think we covered it pretty darn well.